Hello, and welcome to this session on how to respond to an attack, which follows on from a previous session on how to know you've been attacked. My name is Jacqueline Galanders, and I'm part of the HEFESTIS Data Protection Officer Shared Service. And I, along with my colleague Steve McIntosh, who's part of our CISO service, are going to take you through our best practice approach to responding to an attack. If there's been an attack, or even if an attack is suspected, it needs to be reported as quickly as possible. The sooner something can be reported, the sooner it can be contained and dealt with. And as we said in our earlier session, if you managed to attend, there's no blame being attached at this stage. We simply need to know that something has happened so that it can be dealt with. This immediate reporting applies to within the organisation and to any suppliers working on behalf of the organisation, third-party systems providers, for example, or any organisation that uses a data controller's data in partnership with or for the organisation. Third-party partners must be aware of the need to inform the organisation immediately so that the organisation, the data controller, can take responsibility and own the incident. The virtual clock for recovery starts ticking straight away, as does the reporting clock if personal data is involved. There's a requirement to report under certain circumstances to the Information Commissioner's Office within 72 hours if an incident turns out to be a data breach, but we'll talk more about that later. Make sure your internal single reporting point can recognise a potential attack report as quickly as possible and that they know who to tell, your CISO and your DPO. Together, your CISO and DPO can form quite a formidable team to lead the investigation.
The importance of the Data Protection Officer and the Chief Information Security Officer relationship has been shown already through the processes of identifying an attack. And we will see again the importance of that relationship working together to determine how to respond. When something is reported, class it as a security event or report, as it has not yet been verified. Verification is the first step. If there is a positive verification, it is reclassed as a security incident. If not, then it is reclassed as a false positive and can be dealt with through another process. Terminology is very important when dealing with security incidents. It only becomes a data breach when your DPO tells you it's a data breach.
As Steve has said, in data protection terms, it's an incident until it's proven that there's been a breach of personal data in some way, a bit like a near miss and an actual incident in health and safety terms. So we need to identify whether any personal data is involved in the incident as soon as possible. If there isn't, the incident can be led by your CISO. If there is, the DPO and CISO should work together, with the DPO leading on finding out more about the personal data involved and the risks to the data subjects. Most organisations will have a data incident reporting form to use as a basis for this and to use as an audit trail. Use it at this stage to find out about the date and time of the incident, a brief description, whether any special category data is involved, whether the incident is ongoing or contained, and get a description of the steps taken so far. It's important to keep using the form as an incident or breach progresses. It provides a means for documenting the facts regarding the incident, its effects, and the remedial action taken, which we'll come on to later. There is a requirement under UK GDPR to do this, and it's part of the obligation to comply with the accountability principles, and it will provide the basis for reporting a data breach to the ICO when required. And the clock is ticking, remember, so we need to be finding out as much as we can to decide if the incident should be reported to the ICO and/or to the data subjects.
Also consider if this is a reportable incident to Police Scotland. This would be the case when there is any criminality involved. In Scotland, we report to Police Scotland, not Action Fraud, which is an English reporting organisation. You can still report to Action Fraud if you wish, and you may get a response, but crime in Scotland is investigated by Police Scotland. It may be reportable to the National Cyber Security Centre or the Scottish Government for serious incidents. There are levels associated with reporting criteria for the Scottish Government, and our colleague David from the CISO Share will be going into a lot further detail about the need for honest and open reporting, the reporting categories, and the reporting steps in a session tomorrow. So sign up if you have not already done so. Details are on the Cyber Scotland website. There should also be an internal reporting mechanism to ensure that all internal stakeholders are aware, including the senior management. Once an event has been verified and becomes a security incident, you want to contain that incident as quickly as possible. This is to ensure that you minimize the impact uh, on the organization and contain the scope of the attack. Some common steps are to reset all your passwords of any compromised or even suspected compromised accounts. Isolate devices and services from the network to stop any communication with the attackers and to stop any data transfers or malicious applications sending stolen data or control traffic. Now, if possible, disconnect from the network rather than turning off the device so that you can retain vital forensic evidence. But this should be reviewed to reflect the nature of the attack. If the attack is in encrypting all your files, then switch the device off. Or if you can, change the system quickly to read-only. If you can do that, that's great. A valuable lesson I learned from a ransomware incident I was involved in, and this can be prepared in advance and added to your playbooks.
Use your data incident form to document all the actions that are taken. This will form an important audit trail, as well as guide questions and considerations as part of the investigation. This audit trail will be really important should the incident be significant enough to be reported to and investigated by the ICO, and whether it should be reported to data subjects. If investigated by the ICO, they'll want to know details of the circumstances that led to the breach, all actions that were taken to contain and mitigate, and the assessment of the risks to individuals' rights and freedoms. Being able to evidence this is really important for an organisation, and a data incident form provides that one place where everything can be documented. So a little more then on the data incident reporting form and using it to get further information and do that risk assessment of the potential effects on data subjects. As the incident progresses, keep using the incident form to collect further information. Find out what's happened, what type of personal data is involved, especially any special category data. Find out who's been affected, the type of data subjects and the numbers. And importantly, find out what the risks might be to the data subjects. The types of data involved and the number of data subjects affected will be key to the decision to report to the ICO and the data subjects or not. A risk matrix can be used and will involve a multiplication such as the number of data subjects by the potential impact to give a severity rating, and that can guide decision making on reporting. The focus of a personal data breach is on the potential negative consequences for individuals. A breach can have a range of adverse effects on individuals, including emotional distress and physical and material damage. Some breaches might only cause minor inconveniences, but others can significantly affect individuals. There are guidelines online from the European Data Protection Board on how to assess risk, and there's also guidance on the ICO website. At this stage, there's probably enough information to be able to define the incident as that, or as an actual breach, and to make that reporting decision. When the personal data breach has occurred, and there's likely to be that risk to people's rights and freedoms, it must be reported to the Information Commissioner's Office within 72 hours. If there's a high risk, then data subjects must also be informed. And for both, there are specific requirements under UK GDPR as to what must be included in a report. The responsibility for deciding whether a personal data breach meets the threshold to report and the reporting itself sits with the organisation as a data controller. Your data protection officer will provide advice to support that decision-making process though. It's important to remember too that if something looks like being reportable, but you don't have all the information, an early report can be made to the ICO with follow-up information being provided later.
We then come to the eradication phase of our response to the attack, and the steps that you take here will really depend on the nature of that attack. We have a few examples here. If it's a malware attack, then you want to ensure that you run your anti-malware software. This may have to be done when the system is offline so that the malware itself cannot interfere with the process. So make sure that you are prepared for this, which may include knowing the encryption key if the drive is encrypted with BitLocker or another solution. Current advice, and it has been the current advice for a very long time, is to rebuild infected machines, as it's very difficult to determine if you've been able to clean a compromised device fully. Check all the connected network drives and even backups for infection. And by submitting a sample to your AV vendor or to sites such as VirusTotal, you are helping vendors to create rules for their products that can be pushed out to all your other devices to help protect them from this attack. Plus, this helps the wider community as well as they get the updates from their vendors. For a phishing attack, removing the email from your servers before the user gets a chance to open it can be done programmatically. You don't have to, and you don't want to be reading your user's email. And remember to check for any email rules that the attacker has created and to update your email filter settings to stop any further email attacks like this one getting through. You also need to give advice to the people involved, the victims, and those that you don't want to fall victim to the attack. You want to let them know of any actions that need to take to protect themselves or to recover. And for the longer term, we want to look at user training to encourage behavioural change so that we can avoid similar incidents. Once the eradication step is complete, we need to get back to operating normally, and this will involve re-enabling accounts that have been disabled, getting our systems and services back working, but importantly, back to a known secure state. So check those backups for any infections and ensure any vulnerabilities that the attacker exploited have been fixed.
It's important to know whether the data affected can be restored and whether its integrity can be confirmed. The UK GDPR principles require data to be accurate as well as secure, so a recovery of inaccurate data could lead to a second incident using incorrect, out of date, or partial data. A debrief or lessons learned activity is really important post-event so that we can understand what happened and why. Using a data breach reporting form enables the documentation of the facts regarding a breach, as we've said. That can be used to map out what happened and when, enable weak spots to be identified and lessons to be learned. Lessons learned must be put in place through staff training and awareness, through amended or new policies and procedures, and through changes to systems. Incidents often happen because people are enabled to make mistakes. If technology or processes are adapted to limit the ability to do things in a certain way, data breaches might be lessened. An example of this might be the use of autofill for email addresses. There might just be less sending of emails to the wrong recipient if autofill was switched off. It's important to remember that data controllers are required to ensure that their data processors' technical and security arrangements are of an appropriate nature and a standard too. Contracts with third parties should be reviewed to make sure they meet the UK GDPR Article 28 requirements. There have been data breaches investigated by the ICO where a data controller has been found liable due to the actions of a data processor. Steve and our colleague James from the DPO Share are going to talk more about supplier security in a session on Friday, and they'll talk about the need for due diligence. Appropriate due diligence should be carried out before suppliers or other third parties are engaged, but if a debrief or lessons learned review post-incident identifies security or contractual concerns, then these concerns should be addressed along with all the other lessons learned to minimise the risk of a repeat incident. Improvements based on lessons learned must be made. The ICO will look very poorly on an organisation that doesn't learn from its mistakes and suffers ongoing data breaches of the same kind. Reputational damage and the possibility of financial penalties from the ICO will also feature if improvements are not made.
At HEFESTIS, we have tools to help our member organisations understand and respond to attacks in a controlled manner. We have our incident response framework, which is based on several leading industry standard approaches. We have a developed process that members can adopt and tailor to their needs. This process is broken down into 4 incident management phases, as can be seen here. Preparation, the first stage, which has activities such as training, exercises, and developing response processes. The second phase, detection and analysis, for gathering forensic evidence such as logs, analysing that evidence. The third is the response phase, which covers containment, eradication, and recovery. And then the final fourth phase, the post-incident phase, for reviewing lessons learned and including any reporting and improvements needed. We have also included communication advice with templated messaging, which addresses each phase, which our members can use as needed. To go along with the framework and process, we also have a number of playbooks for common incidents. These clearly define the stages and the activities that should be performed when dealing with an incident, and these are all available to our members to use and again add to and tailor to their unique needs. For non-HEFESTIS members attending today, there are plenty of resources out there that you can use. The Scottish Government has itself released a cyber capability toolkit that can help you prepare for an incident. This toolkit can be found published on their website and by following the link at the bottom of this slide. The toolkit contains incident response templates for the public sector, but also the private and third sectors as well. The toolkit also contains some common incident playbooks and an assessment tool to help you understand your maturity in regards to incident management. We recommend that you utilize the available resources to you to accelerate your preparedness and ability to respond to an incident. That is the end of this presentation, a follow-on from the previous one. And Jacqueline and I, again, would like to invite any questions and attempt to answer them, or to make any clarifications to the presentation material. Thank you.